Thank you very much for sticking around. If you did, this is Retail Media Unfiltered, as promised. So I would like to introduce my guests. We'll go a little bit one at a time. So our first, of course, is Jennifer Berglund from Once Upon a Farm.
I feel so welcome. Thank you.
So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about what you do at Once Upon a Farm, and then what makes Once Upon a Farm so special?
Yeah, so I'm the Vice President of Digital Marketing and E-commerce at Once Upon a Farm, and it sounds like some of you might be familiar. We are a line of baby food and kids snacks, and we are a brand that's built on mission and purpose, believing that all children deserve quality nutrition from the start. And one of the things that I've been working hard on that sets us apart in the marketplace beyond product, and I want to apologize first because for those of you who were in the keynote session, I'm going to say the dreaded word of omni-channel. We have been building omni-channel leadership in the marketplace, and again, I won't say that after today. But it is something that has differentiated us, just making sure that we're everywhere our consumer is, where, when, and how they want to buy us. From retail, where we're broadly distributed, we do have a growing Amazon business, as well as a very healthy direct-to-consumer business. And so I'm pretty proud of that work. I also want to acknowledge Tenuity has been a phenomenal partner in this journey. So we started working with them a couple years ago, first on our commerce media, and since then have just added from brand advertising, upper funnel TV, our growth marketing, email, life cycle, et cetera. And so we've been on this journey together, and here we are.
Can you hit me with the, I got to show Jennifer Garner,
Our co-founder.
Was it? Fun fact, she had not done a commercial until just recently. It was the Thursday Night Football or something, right? She hadn't appeared.
Oh yeah, if hopefully maybe you've seen our ads. It is the first ad that she's done with Once Upon a Farm, and you've seen her in Capital One, Neutrogena, et cetera. But for us as a co-founder, and Tenuity helped.
I prefer to think of her as Electra though. She'll always be Electra to me. All right, so let me see. There we go. All right. Yes. All right. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to use a picture where Jennifer and I are on stage at IAB's Connected Commerce Summit to introduce Colin, because he is, 5 weeks in?
6 weeks.
6 weeks in to his role here at the IAB. So if you could tell us more about yourself.
Colin Colburn, leading the Commerce and Retail Media Center of Excellence at the IAB, the Interactive Advertising Bureau. If anyone's not familiar with it, really, we are the standards and trade association for the digital advertising industry. And I like to think of myself as standardization is needed, but it should not kill innovation. I think that is something that you might hear more from the IAB, especially in this area going forward.
I like that.
Well, you think of standards, great.
Yeah.
And then when you turn it into standardization, people think, oh, rules, templates, everything is in a nice square box, and that's not how the world always operates.
Especially our space.
No, we can't do that. Okay, so leaning into that, one of the questions that I asked in the prep call, and I asked Jennifer to give us our actual honest answer on this is so knowing about that, how much does the IAB actually influence what you do today, affect, or even matter to Once Upon a Farm?
Well, my team knows that I'm a pretty honest person. So candidly,
hit us.
Nothing.
Doesn't surprise me. Who's actually read the standards that we have out there? Not even me. I have not. Oh, yeah. Very good.
Head of the class. Thank you.
But that said, I want to read the standards, or at least get them summarized, because I do think that guidance and leadership is really needed. We are in a fast-moving, complex space, and especially when you bring in these retail media networks, there's so many of them, they're ever growing. It's disparate, it's complex, they're all measuring things differently, and so it would help.
Yeah. It does, but there is a lot of documentation, and I think your advice is actually really great. Put it into an LLM notebook.
I'm also
and ask
lazy.
Questions.
So I just took all the IAB's documents and
why not?
Put it in LLM, and I just ask it questions when I want to know something. So all right, what are you doing about that other than more guides possibly? Yeah,
there's a couple of things I think we're going to be working on this year. One is defining what is commerce media and how does retail media fit into that umbrella term. I'm thinking of it as really, I don't think it's any secret, but this idea of non-media companies trying to monetize their physical, digital properties, their first-party data, their proximity to customer transactions. It is a phenomenon that has grown beyond just retail, right? You have United Airlines, you have Chase Media Solutions. I could go on and name many, many. So that it's really an umbrella term that encompasses the verticalization that has occurred in this area, but it's also the depth that has gone on within retail too, where you mentioned this at the beginning of your presentation, PPC, and that's really where this was born. It was Amazon basically being like, we can monetize the searches people are doing on our e-commerce website, and it has grown well beyond that, obviously, where it's off-site now, it's in the store increasingly. So that's really the reason for, I think, the broadening of that, and we're going to be tackling what does that mean, how do we define all these things. We'll also be looking at a topic that I find very interesting that I actually don't think is talked about enough in the industry is how is this going to affect the decades-old relationship of trade, shopper, JBPs that you were mentioning. So we'll be tackling some of that too, and actually putting a little bit of definition around what are the future roles between merchants and brands, and how are we going to define them.
I look forward to seeing it because that is.
And we welcome all perspective.
Yeah.
So, of course, sticking in the vein of LLM notebooks and guides and standards, and like, how do you keep up? So, Jennifer, I'm going to go to you first. Like, how do you keep up today? How should brands, in your opinion, or just like your experience, prepare themselves, especially when you've got Home Depot coming out with their custom metric and Chewy's got theirs? Helpful? Confusing? Would you like to just set it all on fire?
The custom metrics are tough, to be honest with you. Like we've been talking about, there's a lot of complexity, a lot of variance. All the retailers are, they have different KPIs, different measurements, different attribution windows. They measure ROAS differently, all the things. And so it is really challenging. And it would be great to have more standards put out there. That said, I do think that there are retailers who lead in this space, and not necessarily custom metrics per se, but when a network can overlay additional insights that can really help to contextualize our performance, that is helpful. So an example of this that I love is Amazon's omni-channel metrics, right? So being able to see not just how our TV investment impacts Amazon and the Whole Foods ecosystem, but what is the role that it's playing on driving business at other accounts. That is powerful. So I think more like that. But yeah, it's a tough space we're in right now, but exciting.
This is true. Like I said, there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of potential. Colin, how do you keep up?
I mean,
it's your literal job.
I feel like it is part of my job to consume and then to share that back out with our members. So I'm a voracious reader in general, but especially as it relates to all things retail media. You mentioned Kiri Masters. I think her podcast, her daily, it's almost daily. It's 4 times a week that she posts on LinkedIn. You can sign up for her emails too. Couldn't recommend more. She actually had a very recent post, I think it was Tuesday this week, talking a little bit about these custom metrics. And it's interesting from my vantage point, I see both sides of the equation. I see why, I don't think they are helpful. From a macro lens, they're not helpful at all because it's only helpful to the actual retailer, right? Because they're looking at it in only their world. But the reason that they're looking at it in only their world is because they, rightly so, feel like they have a unique shopper and a unique experience. Home Depot is a great example. The Melanie Babcock, who leads their retail media network there, she said, take any of our parts suppliers, they have hundreds of parts that they sell in Home Depot. In Walmart or any of the other big box, they're only selling a couple. So there is a need to be able to work with those brands in a unique way and show them the unique value that they provide them by getting access to their customers versus in a way that's different than another retailer would. So it's one of these things where I think it's a communication challenge that we kind of need to overcome as an industry.
All right, so as you can tell probably, I want to switch a little bit and ask the question about Google and Meta. And so Jennifer, I'm going to go to you first, Colin, I'm going to go to you first and keep going that vein of so they've entered the chat. That's interesting. They now have all this technology. They've got, they're coming. They're coming for it. And then in some cases, they're partnering with the retailers. So kind of like, how do you recommend approaching this going forward?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch this area where, especially as you think about, I know we're going to get to AI in some way, shape, or form, but as that increasingly impacts the customer experience and the way that people shop, how are search engines, how are social networks how are they going to react to that? And then also, how are marketers going to reconsider the way in which they're investing in these platforms because of that? Just using the very, very high-level example of, we know that shoppers are using LLMs to do some of their research, some of their evaluating, some of their potentially buying. Simon mentioned it before, PayPal and Perplexity now having an integration where you can actually purchase in that LLM. Does that disintermediate these platforms from that commerce experience that they have been very, very involved in for so long? So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I would say, as it relates to how should you be looking at this, I think it's really just it's a lot of testing in your own world right now. Like, are your kids using these things to search? If you go and do it, what does it feel like? What does that process look like today? Where do you want it to be better? Is it too creepy? Is it will you give access to an LLM your credit card information? So I think just kind of testing it out in that way is probably the best approach to take, at least initially, but it is very fast moving.
And so you have separate Google and Meta budgets, right?
Yeah.
Now what happens?
This is a really tricky one from a brand perspective, because we have been investing significantly in these platforms. And keep in mind, Once Upon a Farm, we're running a growing retail business and a growing e-commerce business. And so when it comes to platforms like Google and Meta, they're very important from a performance perspective. And we're used to owning and running all of that, having clear transparency, access to the data, ability to make real-time optimizations. And it's concerning because when you start to go bring in a retail partner, you start to lose some of that. I do think on the flip side, there could be some really interesting things from a targeting perspective. But it's really going to come down to, I think, partnership with the retailers, figuring that piece out. How do we share data? How do we get comfortable with them potentially running these campaigns? And honestly, it's something that we are talking about and looking at, because on the most basic level of Google paid search, we see that some of our top key accounts are buying our branded terms. Not that we're investing in it, they're just doing it because we have a really hot brand, and so, why not? But, and we end up competing with them. And so it is something that we're gonna have to address.
Yeah, I've seen several, Google's probably to your point, you have keywords that you're bidding on that either can go to a target page or whatever it is, and then the D2C, and you're like, didn't I just drive up my own CPC? I kind of did. How can we stop this? And they're like, nope, retailer says you don't get to know because we're doing it for you for free because you're cool, or we're going to charge you for it, which is also very fun. So with that, what is probably, and don't get me wrong, I do think it is a great opportunity when you look at those platforms and the maturity and their availability and the way to kind of connect that. I just don't think that we're quite there yet. So given that, what do you think is, and then Colin, if you could start first, what do you think is underestimated right now for growth today? Is it Google and Meta? Something else?
I think it's the store and the brick and mortar store. That is the next area that all the retail media networks are looking to grow into. They want to be able to digitize their stores. You see, I think it's either Hy-Vee or H-E-B, I forget who I was just talking to about this, but bought 50,000 Samsung screens last year. So think about if you want to, I guess if you want investment advice.
They couldn't afford
all the screen providers are going to be pushing hard to get into these stores to be able to serve placements. So I do think it has always been, I think, on the radar in this space since retail media really did emerge about 10 years ago. But I think it's going to be coming to the forefront in the next couple of years in a really meaningful way of being able to leverage the store and the power that it does have with consumers of, most of these retailers, it's still the vast majority of the revenue happens in there.
Jennifer, what are you looking towards?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, from a brand perspective, and we've kind of been talking about this, but it's the power of the data. And I think as you mentioned the in-store, it's almost even more important, right? We're used to getting data and measuring things in the digital space. Well, now when we're connecting this in-store, which is an incredibly powerful opportunity, a great consumer shopper experience. But again, the brands, we want the data and we want to understand and know that things are working. And I really do think that retailers have a phenomenal opportunity here really to leverage this data, create these really unique online to offline experiences and really start to drive shoppers through that funnel. So it'll be interesting, I think, to see who kind of steps up and leads in this area from a retail perspective.
Yeah, it's like it's a love-hate relationship a little bit too, because you're like, but you have everything, but you can't have it. You're like, well, but it costs, right? So as we get to that kind of better relationship, and speaking of the funnel and moving through in retailers, if you weren't in the last session, Once Upon a Farm has a coupon in the swag store, and I will push it all day long because I love that brand. All right, so. What should brands be, moving a little bit into the tech space? All right, so we've looked at the future and the power of the store, the power of the data. What should brands be looking forward to? Again, we have all this data. What is it from a tech side? Are you kind of looking at from a future-proofing perspective when it comes to adhering to standards?
I mean, our perspective is very obvious of leveraging this. And again, your ideas, I could not advocate it for it more of, if I'm going into an RFP and I'm sitting in a brand, I'm taking this guideline and I'm going to ask questions. What should I be asking in the RFP based on these standards to my vendor? Because I actually think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have in general in retail media is sometimes we don't know what questions to be asking the networks and the vendors that are out there. So I think this guide can really help with that. And rather than having to read through the 50 pages, let's make it easy and have LLMs work harder for us.
It's 50. It's like 100, and it's like really robust. And that's like the part that I like love and hate about it is because it is so comprehensive, but at the same time, to the point about the questions, I think one of the things we do is we assume, like we go in and I can't tell you the number of times I've gone in and go, wait a minute, when does an impression count? Is it when the page loads? MRC standard? Do you have a lazy load? What is it? And you would be surprised at the variance in that answer over the years and how it has not been consistent. So I would say don't take it for granted. All right. We have beautiful Jennifer back here today, both of them. What is Once Upon a Farm doing in terms of future-proofing for ad tech and volatility?
I mean, building upon that for me and for a brand, it's all about education, and particularly around the compliance piece. Privacy regulation is very top of mind, especially when we talk about digital and data and connecting all of these things. Again, to drive to conversion, there are some concerns in there, right? Rightfully so. So it's really making sure that we're educated. And then even beyond that, something that's very important to me is building out the right team. Ad tech is one thing, but the power of it is really the people behind it who are using it and leveraging it. So I want to make sure my team is educated, that they're agile and curious and empowered, because I think that's really where we can make these technologies work to our advantage to really drive the business forward.
Absolutely. I believe you have a pretty strong support group here today as well. Yeah. All right. We have one AI question. Are we even ready for this? Like I was serious. Like when we were going through the prep for this, and I had the question, and I was like, I got to put an AI question. I started writing like, I don't even know if this is a good question. Like, are we even ready for this?
I tend to think that we are in the consumer lens. I don't know if we're ready for it from a business side of things in terms of how, from the consumer side of things, I think it's understanding who are and we're actually going to be doing research. This is a plug for the IAB, I guess. We're going to be doing research on this very topic, ethnographic study, later this year to follow a cohort of consumers and telling them to leverage some sort of LLM in their shopping journey. And we're going to be asking them questions like, what was your experience like? What were the gaps? What were the things that made it difficult to buy or easy to buy? So I think from that lens, I actually think that we are ready for it to be able to. There's a cohort of consumers that are out there that we can really test and learn from. So from that perspective, I do think that we are ready for it. And we've been talking. I mean, you use the word omnichannel. It's kind of hard to believe that's like a taboo phrase now. It is, but we've been preparing kind of
But
for
only since
this.
this morning. Like it's still. I mean, the day is
By
still young.
tomorrow, it'll be fine again. We can say it tomorrow.
But we've been preparing for this for a long time. So I do think we are kind of prepared for adjusting to where our customer is going.
You ready for it?
I think as ready as anyone else is. I mean, honestly, there's so much opportunity here, and I think it's a really exciting time to be in the space. I think there's some basic low-hanging fruit, optimizing content, scaling of content, et cetera, personalization, driving more relevancy, et cetera. But I think beyond that, there's just going to be a much bigger opportunity, especially from a retail perspective, to leverage these ad signals to think about their business in terms of driving in store. The thing that I just try to think about when it comes to AI is don't chase the shiny object, right? Because the next day it's going to be something else. Who knows? But really think about what is the business problem we're trying to solve? How do we leverage the technology to do that? So,
I do like shiny objects, though. All right.
all the glitter.
I'm gonna, yeah, I do love, oh man, so much glitter. I have a 9-year-old girl who loves them all. There's so much clairs in my house and glitter. All right, we're gonna end with a fun one. I love this question at the end, but you guys can decide who wants to go first. But tell me something I don't know. Retailer, regulations, brand, research.
This isn't fair because Elizabeth, you know so much.
It doesn't have to be about
You're
our
like a
events.
leader in our
You could just
space.
tell me about something about, I don't know, Times Square.
Here's what I would say. I just hope that, especially as it relates to these retail media networks, I would encourage everybody to think bigger, think more holistically. Again, there's a deep data loop here that can really go beyond just advertising, right? Thinking about innovation, distribution planning, forecasting, finding new audiences. There's so much power and opportunity. But again, it's reliant upon a true partnership with a strong retailer to take this really beyond just a transactional thing.
I'll give you two things. One is, I guess there are three things. One is incrementality is actually not a word. Look it up in the dictionary. It is incremental is a word in the dictionary, but incrementality is actually not a word in Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Two is that I believe it will be a word in 2026 because be defining what incrementality is.
Yes, okay.
And then three is, I alluded to it before, but there is the coming convergence between trade and shopper and retail media is coming. If you're on the brand side, I know you mentioned your relationship with sales. You better have a good relationship there and really understanding if I'm not part of the JBP negotiation today, I better either find my way into it or be very well versed in what is going on in those negotiations and what are the tactical maneuvering that my sales team is doing, because you're eventually going to be part of it at some point. And then
You want to be on the early part of that.
yeah, not at the end.
Not at
And if you're on the retailer side, it's about who are the merchants and who do I need to know and how do I get to tap into their brain, because they power so much of what retailers do. But I find so often that folks who are on the retail media side in those networks know really nothing about merchants and merchandising. So I think I guess the learning is, education and learning is going to be so paramount going forward as the store becomes a bigger part of retail
You
media.
just gave us breaking news. Like, IAB is going to define incrementality, and it's going to be a word.
Hopefully we will.
We can tweet that, right? Yeah. Is that what we do these days? I don't even know. All right. I want to thank very much Colin and Jennifer for being here and being very honest. And all of you for being here. And of course, I would get to be the one that sends you on your coffee break. Thank you.